Well, good morning, CSL Denver. So happy to be here with you and to enjoy you. We're on our side. We're just going to own this right now. We're having some technical difficulties. We can't hear, but we can hear what's inside, okay? So we're just going to trust what is the internal message, what we're hearing in our hearts. And so, paradox, a statement or a proposition that despite sound or apparently sound reasoning from acceptable premises leads to a conclusion that seems senseless, logically unacceptable, or just self-contradictory. Okay? Are you up for an honest confession from me? Sure. Okay. I'm a minister, long time now, and a chaplain, and sometimes I have difficulty trusting God. Anybody else ever have that difficulty? Yeah, so I'm a minister, but I have trouble trusting God at times. That seems a little contradictory right there, right? Well, today we're going to actually talk about, and the title of my message is The Genius of Paradox, because there is a genius within this seeming contradiction, this seeming two things being true at once, or two things seeming wrong at once, or one seeming right and one seeming wrong. It can all be part of the experience we know as paradox. Now, I love God. I love spirit. I believe in spirit. And then sometimes I just feel uneasy about my future. I'm worried about the tension in our country. Anybody else here? Yep. I'm worried about the tension overseas. Right? We have our Muslim friends and our Jewish friends at odds with each other again. And it's the same God. And if you look historically, that's an Abrahamic tradition. It's the same God they believe in. And yet they're at odds with one another. We can worry about so many things. The political tension in our country, we've got a lot of that right now. We could worry about all sorts of things. What if the wrong person gets elected, right? What if I lose my job next week? What if you lose your job next week? What about life after retirement? All of us here are either there or very close to it, right? What's going to happen? What if I marry the wrong person, right? Here's a good paradox for you. I met my partner during the pandemic. Who would ever thought I'd meet her during the pandemic, right? Come on, what a contradiction. And it goes on and on and on. And I want to trust God. I want to trust that Spirit within me is constantly guiding and directing me and that God's got me, right? But then I see all of this seeming evidence that it's not so. That it's just not so. Ernest Holmes teaches us about paradox. Ernest Holmes talks about the law. See, the law will work whether you believe in it or not. And if you don't believe in it, it will work according to that belief. And so it appears like it doesn't work. In reality, it is working perfectly. Now that's a paradox. It will work according to your belief. But people say it's evidence that there is no such thing as the law. Right? Okay, you can hold that belief. I'll support you in that. And I'm going to just keep believing what I believe. Right? So it's a fair question. Can we trust Spirit? Can we truly trust Spirit? Well, today I'm going to give you two affirmative prayers, just short little affirmations that can help you build trust in the seeming, unwitting, not going to be true about God, right? So when you're doubting God the most, these will help you. When you think there's no way this prayer is ever going to come true, I'm going to give you affirmative statements to make so that you can lean into it. And let's start with a metaphysical look at a story in the Bible. Jesus was by Lake of Gennesaret, and he was teaching. And it came to the end of the day, and he saw two fishing boats out on the water. Fishermen cleaning nets. They didn't have any fish in the nets. They were just cleaning them. And he got into the boat belonging to Simon Peter. You guys all remember Simon Peter. And he says, take us on the water. I want to do some teaching. I want to speak to the people. And when he had finished speaking, this is from Luke 5, he said to Simon, put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch. Now let's take a look at the meaning of that metaphysically. Deep water is deeper consciousness, right? It's going deeper than they had been going before. Let down the nets is metaphysical for surrender. To surrender and let down your nets and go deeper. Well, you can imagine what Simon Peter was experiencing. He's like, you're not a fisherman. You're a carpenter. You're my rabbi. You're not a fisherman. I am a fisherman. I know what I'm doing. I'm trying to catch things all day long, and we haven't caught anything. Why don't you teach and I'll fish, right? So you can imagine he's like going, that's not going to work, Master. Not going to work. And what you're asking me kind of sounds stupid. How many times have you wanted to believe in something and people go, well, that's stupid, right? And did you do it anyway? Did you go deeper into your consciousness? Did you surrender into knowing that God had you and God had your prayer? So Simon answers, instead of saying all those things he was probably thinking, he says, Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. Yeah, well, Jesus told him to do it anyway, right? And remember, he's saying don't worry about tomorrow, yet has he seen the division in our country? Bless those who persecute, and you don't know the people we work with, right? Or have to live with, or have to hang out with, or anything else. So don't lean on your own understanding. Well, if I don't lean on my own understanding, how are the bills going to get paid, right? Well, we always say, well, you treat and then you move your feet. You do your part, right? And I'm a big believer in there. But that's paradox. That's really what happens when everything seems to speak against the truth we are speaking and we lean into it anyway. So here's the first affirmative statement, all right? Spirit guides me to follow Spirit's ways even when I don't understand. Spirit guides me to follow Spirit's ways even when I don't understand. So let's see the way this prayer lived out. Simon let down his nets. Simon answered, we haven't worked, but because you say, or we have worked hard all night, haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I will let down the nets. See how he's leaning into the paradox? He's leaning into Spirit. So let's affirm that. Repeat after me. Let down my net.
Let down my net.
Let down my net.
Let down my net.
All right. It takes that moment of surrender. When we surrendered, suddenly we could hear the audio just like you guys out there. And we got real smart. We just gave it up. And guess what? Somebody turned on their phone and we could hear what you were hearing. Amazing. We let down the nets. We went deeper in consciousness. And you don't have to fully understand to follow immediately. When you get that little intuitive hit, follow it anyway. Follow it no matter what the evidence shows opposing that. It's these small acts of following that bring about the biggest results for us, the biggest results. Now, as many of you know, I am the chaplain over at the State Mental Health Hospital, and I do a Sunday service there, except on fifth Sundays, I come here to see you guys. And each week, I'm supposed to deliver a fairly interfaith, open to all, but most of our people are kind of mainstream Christian. And so I was like, what do I do? How do I stay in integrity? And I'm supposed to do this interfaith, but how do I do this and really give a message that I can believe in and I feel authentic delivering? And so I thought one week, I think I might do this whole series on staying positive. I don't know. I try to keep it pretty real. I work in a mental health hospital. Many of these people may be managing that mental health issue for the rest of their life. How do I keep it real and tell them to stay positive? Well, I did it anyway. I did a whole series on staying positive. And I even added in affirmations, kind of like what we just did. I actually threw it out there, and you know what? The entire congregation answered back. They all affirmed with me. And afterwards, they came up and said, thanks, chaplain. I really needed to hear that today. I was like, okay. And then I had another person who had been struggling. She'd been doing better. And yet she needed to get her GED. She, that week, following doing the affirmations, and she told me later, I said those affirmations every day. And she said, I completed an entire chapter of the GED study book on my own. That's pretty amazing for this woman. It was not easy for her to do it. And yet she kept affirming, she kept staying positive, and she completed a whole chapter herself. So the smallest of intuitive nudges, follow them. It's God speaking very much to us, right? Some people think that God's not, what is it, our Methodist friends, I think, that say God's still speaking. God's still speaking. God is still speaking every moment of every day if we listen. We just have to develop the capacity to listen. How do we do that? We go deeper in the water, go deeper in consciousness. And we also have to let down our net. We have to surrender. So I'll tell you another story of one of my patients. Now, she's got pretty severe psychosis, and she went from believing that God is punishing her, and she slaps herself quite a bit, quite often. She went from believing that was God punishing her because she had done something really bad in her past, to then clinging on to the idea that the devil was attacking her. Now, mind you, given my new thought beliefs where I don't even believe there is a devil, right? That there's only good, there's only God, the omnipotent, I had to bite my tongue, right? Because I can't tell this woman there's no devil. I can't tell her that her experience is invalid. I'm not going to do that. So guess what? I got to lean into spirit, lean into truth, and know that she is whole in spite of all the evidence that says otherwise. And you know what? She gets better. Some days she's not so good. But overall, she is talking and engaging more with me and more with other people than she has in the past. And so how do you do that? You got to get clingy. You got to get clingy. Now, this isn't the bad kind of clingy where somebody's like, you're like, come on, get back a little bit. I need my space. This is the good kind of clingy. This is the kind of clingy where you cling to spirit within you and realize it's always been clinging to you. Always. So we're going to get clingy back. Proverbs tells us, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Now, metaphysically, we see that very differently, right? It's not necessarily a him or a her we're leaning into. It's possibly an it, right? I mean, how does the infinite have any gender anyway, right? I've never understood that concept. But what we understand is if we can let go of our idea of it, like we were going to fix this thing up here, we were all of us going, hey, do this, do that, trying every technical idea we had. And when we gave it up, suddenly somebody gets the great intuitive nudge to just turn up their phone and play the audio for us here in the room on Facebook. Amazing. So there's a Hebrew word, it's batak, and it means to cling to. So clinging, we want to have batak, cling to spirit. And in order to cling to God, guess what? You have to let go of what you're currently holding on to, right? Got to let that go. Yeah, letting go of my understanding, my bright wisdom, my plans. Not so easy, is it? I struggle with it on a daily basis. Here's the paradox of letting go from an Eastern perspective. From the Ashtavakra Gita, not to be confused with the Bhagavad Gita, it says, one who is attached to the world thinks renouncing it will relieve his misery. One who is attached to nothing is free and does not feel miserable even in the world. That's pretty deep, right? Yeah. So he says in explanation, so he doesn't have to renounce the world, doesn't have to pick up the saffron robes and walk away from house and family. The world is there, it can play, but there is this seeing that I am not the one who can be attached or unattached. So that's riding that place between the yin and the yang even, right? Where it's not the yin or the yang, but that perfect balance that is the line that curves beautifully between in that design, right? Sri Muji says there's no such thing as an enlightened person. It's a paradox in terms. So if you can feel like I'm an enlightened person, what is that? That is thinking of yourself as though you are a special sort of person. This is just the voice of arrogance, just the voice of intellectual understanding or spiritual ego, which can play like this. So the idea is, the moment that we think we're enlightened, guess what? We're not. What a paradox there, right? It's kind of like in meditation, I try to every day get up and spend at least 15 minutes in meditation. And when I'm in there, there's that point where I get to that gap, right? And it's that beautiful and then I think, I'm in the space. Guess what? The second I say I'm in the space, I'm no longer in that space. So here we are on this wonderful adventure called human being life. The biggest trip is getting rid of your ego. And of course, the joke of it all is that your ego doesn't exist. That comes from Alan Watts. The biggest ego trip is getting rid of your ego. And of course, the joke of it all is that your ego does not exist. I love that. Spirit, because I trust you, I'm going to let down my nets. I'm going to go deeper. I don't know the outcome, but I'm going to go deeper. See, here's the real truth. Outcome is Spirit's responsibility. Our responsibility is to follow. Right? How many times when those of us that are practitioners or studying the science of mind, in prayer they tell you, don't outline the prayer so much. Go for the quality of what you want to experience. Why? That's because we don't need to tell Spirit how to have it happen. Right? We don't need to do that. So I'm getting clingy. I hope you'll get clingy too. And I'm going to cling to Spirit because in reality it's all that I am. It's really all that I am. And sometimes big miracles often follow simple acts of surrender. So let's go back to our story in Luke. When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. That's when they went deeper and let out the nets, right? So they signaled their partners in other boats to come and help them, and they came and filled another boat so full that they began to sink. Right? Lean in, and we get more than we expect. All right. Let's go back to that first affirmative prayer, and then I'm going to give you another one. Affirmative statement. These are very powerful. I follow Spirit's ways even when I don't understand. I follow Spirit's ways even when I don't understand. And I have another one for you. Spirit in me, surrender what I cannot control. Spirit in me, surrender what I cannot control. One more time, let's try that. Spirit in me, surrender what I cannot control. Well, after all that happened, Simon Peter comes running up to Jesus and he says, "Go away, Lord, I'm a sinful man." Well, we know that just means he just missed the mark a lot. Okay? We all miss the mark a lot. Let's just all own that, right? And so Jesus says to him, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." Right? He turned him to understanding that instead of worrying so much about getting fish, you're going to call people to the message of truth, the message that the I Am lives and resides within all of us, right? Within all of us. So to Simon Peter, his nets represented provision, security, future. First, you let them down, but then you lay them down. So let go of your plans, let go of your understanding, cling to God. Therein lies the transcendence of paradox. The transcendence, that equals the genius of paradox. So, in the last 3 weeks leading up to this, let's see, even 3 days ago, I was having severe foot pain. I was experiencing plantar fasciitis. I went to a provider. The provider said, oh, you don't just have plantar fasciitis, you also have, your Achilles tendon is a mess. And I was like, well, is that why it hurts so much? And he's like, yeah. So he did some acupressure and things of that nature. I went to a reflexologist. All of that helped, but I still had this just severe pain in my left foot. And I'm talking like not wanting to walk. And guess what? My job requires that I walk all over the campus of the hospital. I get my 10,000 steps most days before I ever get home. So believe me, it was getting in my way. And so suddenly I decided maybe I should go to prayer with this. So I started bringing it into my morning practice, and I decided, you know what? I'm having trouble believing that my foot pain's going to go away, so I'm going to get some help here. So I contacted 3 other people that I love and trust and said, would you please pray for the healing of my foot? And I let down my nets. I laid down my net and said, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe I'm going to deal with this and manage this for the rest of my life. I am getting older. Maybe this is what it looks like. So I laid down my net on that one. I surrendered. And guess what? My foot is doing great. I would not have been standing up here feeling so good. I mean, I don't know why it went away. Do you know why it went away? Probably because I surrendered and asked Spirit to direct it, right? So some people trust in economy. Some people trust in who holds office. Some people trust in the bank account. And some people trust in a medical report, like I kind of was. Well, I got plantar fasciitis and a messed up Achilles tendon. But then other people knew better for me, right? I leaned into their faith, to their belief that my spiritual foot is whole and complete. My spiritual foot knows how to be a foot. It knows how to guide and direct me into my life. So I chose to trust in a loving Spirit who is in total control. And as religious scientists, we trust in a loving Spirit that everyone will eventually come to the wholeness of God, right? We don't think there's anybody going out the back door and down the steps to someplace bad. In fact, most of us say we don't even know where we're going to go after we pass. We just know it's going to be the greater yet to be. And so I do believe that. I do believe that we can restore wholeness to our lives, wholeness in the planet. I believe we can experience security and joy. I believe we can let go of the tears. And that means crying sometimes. And then it means smiling when it's time for that. No more pain, no more heartache, except when it happens. Paradox, right? But we have to see differently. To be able to transcend the paradox in our world, we have to surrender our vision of limitation and to transcend the paradox. Only then can we experience the genius of paradox. Ultimately, my friends, it's either all God or it's not. That's the ultimate. It's all God or it's not. So I'm going to hold that even with the strife in the Middle East, even with the strife in Ukraine, it's all God. And my job, and I invite you to make it your job, is to see God in it. To see through those seeming conflicts into Spirit. So can we trust it's all God when we see an illness and experience a pandemic? Well, I say, let down your nets and go deeper. Namaste. Do I do a prayer now? Is that fine? Okay, let's pray. Right here now, let us just step into our hearts, step into our souls. And from this place, let us remember that there is but one power, one presence, one life. And that is the life of Spirit, the life of God. It is the only life that is. It is the universal living and lovingness of Spirit. And right now, I am living and loving as Spirit. And I know that each and every one of us are living and loving as Spirit. And so this day I speak my word on behalf of all of us to step into our greater yet to be, transcend the paradox by affirming that we follow Spirit within even when we don't understand. And let us affirm this day that we can and indeed do surrender to Spirit. We surrender to Spirit within all that we cannot control, knowing that God's got us, knowing that God has a greater idea within us and through us than we ever could hold. And so I just want to bless, raise, and praise each and every person within the sound of my voice and all of those that we hold dear. Simply let us let go. Let us quit trying to control and let God be God. I am so grateful for the power of prayer. I'm grateful for us coming together on this beautiful snowy day in spiritual community. Whether you're here in the room with us or you are online with us, we are here together in community. And for that and so much more, I'm grateful. So I release this word now into that infinite mind, that law of mind, that law of love. And I simply let it be, this and something greater still, for the highest and best of all. And we affirm this together by saying, and so it is. Thank you.